Podcasts, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the podcast.
There are 4 lights!
Its 5-year mission to explore strange, familiar worlds, to seek out new listeners and new civilizations, to boldly go where most nerds have gone before. Join Matt and Shirley on their 5-year mission with a different guest each week as they talk about an episode of Star Trek, from the original series through Enterprise. They'll cover every episode, eventually.
Hi everybody, and welcome back to There Are 4 Lights! And we apologize for the long delay, but I'm Matt, and here's Shirley.
Hello.
And this week, after our long hiatus, we're joined by Tiny Ramion.
Ramion. One of those
Ramion.
goofy Polish names.
I should have asked.
Ramion is Polish?
It actually is. It doesn't sound Polish. There's no ski or wits, but it actually is Polish.
Yeah, I am. I'm a Niedzwiecki. I'm Polish.
Oh, that's right, yeah. So,
you don't remember that.
Hello, brethren.
Hello, sister.
And we are back to a wonderful, solid baseline for our show. So, Tiny, you are a podcaster and a spy. Would you like to tell us about that?
Absolutely. Yes, I work for the CIA. No, I'm not a spy. I have 2 podcasts that I participate in. I am a co-host of the Obsessive View Podcast, along with my friends Matt and Mike. We talk about movies, TV shows, topics related to movies and TV shows. And I also have a podcast called The Secular Perspective. We talk about all things religion and secularism, if that's your kind of thing. You can find Obsessive Viewer at obsessiveviewer.com.
Yep, Matt was on for Dagger of the Mind. No, that's not right.
Mm-mm.
That was Phil.
Matt
Matt has been on. Matt Hurt
something.
was on at one point.
Yeah.
And we had a good time with him, and we're glad that you're here.
Me too.
So this week we watched Galileo 7, and Shirley's going to do our plot overview.
Woohoo! This is the first time I'm doing a plot overview. So, the Galileo, it's called the Galileo 7.
Okay.
Okay. And it was,
And
this is from a press release on December 20th, 1966.
You know why we know it's called the Galileo? Because on the side of the shuttle,
It
in
says
very nice
script.
scripty script, had the Galileo written
Galileo.
there. It could have been rainbow, and it still would have fit.
Very stylish. Very 60s.
It was. Go ahead. I'm sorry, Shirley.
So it says, the severely damaged shuttlecraft from the USS Enterprise threatens to become a tomb for its trapped crew after it crashes on a planet and loses contact with its mothership in the Galileo 7. Hold on, I gotta go past a little bit of stuff. Marooned and under attack by ape-like creatures, a landing party with Spock in charge faces imminent death when all communications are cut off. Meanwhile, in the orbiting Enterprise, Captain Kirk must decide whether to continue the search or abandon his men to deliver emergency medical supplies to a plague-ridden planet some distance away. Kirk's effort to locate his missing shipmates have been hampered by a stellar occurrence. That's what it says, stellar.
No, you're fine. Keep going.
Occurrence in the region where the shuttlecraft Galileo was lost. The ship's sensory equipment is barely functioning. Adding to Kirk's dilemma is the High Commissioner Ferris traveling on the Enterprise with orders that the ship must leave the area soon. Meanwhile, damage to the Galileo and limited fuel reserves have Spock calculating that 2 men of the 7 survivors must stay behind, facing almost certain death. There are 3 layers of conflict: man versus beast, man versus man, and man versus himself. As with the enemy within, this is an examination of the requirements of command, with a look at the 2 sides of the human personality. This time, however, the case study is the hybrid half-human, half-Vulcan Mr. Spock.
Okay, so that was a little breathier than it needed to be there at the end, but good.
Wow.
Good.
No.
A couple things I think that are notable here. this is the first episode that I have seen some severe defects in what they were doing with the scenery and the props.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And I will explain that in a few minutes.
This is also the first episode to really focus on a character other than Kirk, and that would be Spock this time. And the shuttlecraft was very important because it was built by another company in exchange for toy rights. So the shuttlecraft, the whole reason it exists is toys.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah. So AMT, a toy man, well, what are they called?
Toy company?
No, not toys. The stuff, models. A model company.
Oh, okay.
AMT, a model company, saw that they were trying to get the shuttlecraft built. I think it was from a press release. I could go through the book and check. But they found out that they were trying to get a shuttlecraft built, and they traded building 2 full shuttlecrafts, one for interior and one for interior camera work and shots, and one for exterior camera work and shots, for the exclusive rights to build the models for the Enterprise. And some of the
like the play sets.
Well, not the play sets, but the episodes. So
okay.
the shuttlecraft that you see launching out of the back of the Enterprise in the beginning, when the Galileo takes off, that is actually from AMT.
Oh, okay. And actually, AMT is still around and still does a lot of models. I didn't realize that. I was just taking a look at the pictures. But this does start the toy craze for Star Trek, which is still kind of cool. The outside of the shuttle, I think, was fine. The inside was a little lacking. Like it was just like there wasn't
a box.
It was a box with some weird leaning chairs.
It was very bare bones.
Yeah, I mean they had some switches, but like panels were in the worst places ever because like. The first guy to die, whose name I don't remember because he's clearly not important. Larimer? No, before Larimer died, it was the other guy. No, it was Larimer. He had to turn all the way around to flip a switch behind him. It was such a bad design. This show really reminded me how much I miss the panels from Next Generation because they are so much better looking.
Yeah,
they're so futuristic instead of switches and knobs and this. I mean, there's a point where this completely, like, I'm really trashing the equipment set, but, like, there's a point where the camera pans across Sulu, and he's just sitting there with his 2 fingers on these 2 fader switches, rocking them back and forth. What's he doing there?
Like, I didn't even notice that, but okay.
Like, I'm like, what is he, like, he's just rocking them back and forth. That's all he's doing, so.
He's keeping the ship in orbit, obviously.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So.
It's an unfortunate feature of a lot of Star Trek episodes, but I think, the way they make up for that kind of cheesiness is in the writing.
Usually, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This one was a little, I don't know, the other part that I saw about the sets and props was there was a point where a spear, so the giant ape creatures have spears that they throw, and I can just imagine while they're filming, there's like a guy just behind the camera, like just throwing rocks and spears out there.
Oh no, you don't understand. So They Are the Voyages,
These Are the Voyages,
TSO Season 1, written by Mark Cushman. It actually gives assessments of each episode, and it talks about like literally how bad this episode was because they were very short on money, they fell short on their budget, and they fell short on time. So some of the scripting and the writing didn't get done the way they wanted to, and then clearly the sets, but they were. It also talks about there was literally, you could tell there's these human-sized people throwing these like oversized objects onto the set.
Those spears were huge. I mean, just huge.
And the assessment goes to specifically point out how horrible that rock was that fell on Spock's leg.
Well, that, and there's a point where
you could tell it was paper mache.
There's a point where the spear comes into the camera view and hits a rock, and stuffing flies out.
Did you see? I didn't see that. Why didn't you point that out?
I think Spock is carrying back
the guy,
the dead dude,
oh.
and the spear comes in and hits it, and just stuffing flies out. I was just like, oh my gosh, like they definitely used Wilhelm screams twice in this.
I noticed them.
They were really on top of that.
So is that when it just
That's the canned scream that they have when
the scream.
The first guy gets hit in the back with the spear, and then the second time when the ape thing goes in for a hug.
Goes in for a hug.
For a death hug. I don't know what that was. Like, I don't know. But I don't know. This one, we have not watched an episode before now that I didn't care for, and this is the first one where I was like, could be that I might have watched it twice in one day, but even the first time I was not all that impressed. It just didn't do it for me. Tiny, have you said to me that you were starting to watch the original series? Have you watched much?
I haven't watched much. I think Galileo 7's like the 16th or 17th episode in the season. I wasn't that far along yet. I think I've only watched about 8 or 9. But I have a very passing relationship with Star Trek in general. I used to watch Next Generation and Deep Space Nine when I was a kid, but it was mostly just reruns, and I never like watched it live or tuned in whenever it aired originally or anything. But I enjoyed those when I was a kid, and then really it just kind of faded away, and I got reintroduced to the franchise through the J.J. Abrams films. And then I just decided I'm going to start watching the original series, and my goal is to get through literally everything, all the series and all the movies and everything. So I just started from the beginning.
Nice. Well, don't watch it more than once in a week, and you can just follow along with us.
Awesome. That's a good idea.
But you've watched a couple other episodes of the original series. Like, they're comparing those to this. Like, do you see a difference that's heavily, I don't know, heavily influenced by what they didn't have, the budget and the time? Like, is it that obvious, or is it just me that I really did not enjoy this episode?
I don't think it was that obvious, as kind of an outsider's perspective. I don't know. It had been probably about 3 weeks since I'd watched an episode. I've been crazy busy lately, but I don't know. I think I think it's kind of a staple of the original series that there's that level of campiness and cheesiness to it. But like I said, they make it up in so many other ways. It did stand out a little bit in this episode, but I don't think it took anything away from it. Like I said, I think they cover it up well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Shirley, what did you think? Because you've been watching these along with me.
Right. I mean, after watching The Squire of Gothos and then watching this, definitely I feel like, I don't know what kind of budget constraints they were under, but I feel like whenever the Star Trek, the original episode, has budget constraints, they always land on a rocky planet with no vegetation.
And lots of mist.
and lots of mist.
That was one of the things that I noticed is, like, every time they go to a slightly strange planet, there's just mist all over the ground. And there was a weird edit there that I stopped and went back and looked at when
at the very beginning.
Oh, when the guy gets hit with the spear. And he goes down, and then his buddy comes down off the rocks, and it pans down, and it's really just an edit of weird mist stuff coming up. Mm-hmm. Did you notice that?
Like Tiny? It was trying to cover up the body or something, so they didn't have to show the...
Or like they didn't have it all down there. I don't know.
I did not notice that.
That one's pretty early on. It's just a weird effect that in the 60s, maybe they just would have accepted it, and I'm willing to accept a lot of that stuff, but I think this one caught me a little heavier than most.
Well, some of it's probably censorship too. There's, I think, standards were different in the 60s. You couldn't show as much violence as you can now, so that's probably part of it.
That could be. Yeah, I hadn't thought about that. Okay, so anyway, what were you saying, Shirley? You don't know? Uh-oh. Nope. I ruined it for you.
Deer in the headlights.
We were comparing this to the previous episodes as far as...
Oh, no, it's just that I feel like, whenever I read through the book of budget constraints, like, we're always on a rocky planet and there's little to no vegetation. But I feel like this one, you could definitely tell that was papier-mâché rocks. And like you were saying earlier, you could tell that they were getting stuff was getting thrown onto the set by stagehands.
Yeah.
So.
And not thrown accurately or effectively at all. I mean,
right.
It's literally like someone just kind of lobbed it in there. It was like floating in the air. It was really, really not convincing at all.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know.
I just felt like if
I don't feel like the characters
these are like caveman guys, and this is their tools, they would know how to use them better.
Yeah, and if they're 12 foot tall, they've got to be strong enough to throw it hard.
Exactly. Right. Yeah, I've seen paper airplanes fly with more purpose than those things.
Yeah, that's kind of fair. So I mean, like the plot is pretty simple. We get to see a lot of Spock dealing with his heavy logic, and some of the other crew being complete and utter jerks. I mean, Boma could not have been a bigger jerk.
Oh my gosh, I feel like he was very childish. I mean, I understand they were trying to like show the emotional side of being in a traumatic or stressful situation like that, but I just felt like some of it was very over the top.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest credits you can give to this series is, at least in my experience so far, is that they're not afraid to ask hard questions and try to answer them, because, it's like, what do you get from a leader who's in a group with in a dire situation? What do you get from a leader who literally has no capability to be empathetic? He only makes decisions based on facts and numbers and what's happened. It's just all logic. There's no emotion or empathy involved in the decisions at all, and we see the conflict that arises from it. And a lot of shows and storytellers are afraid to ask those kind of questions and try to tackle them. But Star Trek does it every week, and it's pretty impressive what they pull off.
Well, and there's an episode in Next Generation where Data is given command of a ship as part of a web network to kind of, I think they're catching Romulans spying on them or something with a cloaking device. Anyway, he's given command of the ship, and his underlings are all against him, kind of like this, but in the end, Data wins out and shows that he's not just all logic. He has a reason for what he's doing, and I think there's some differences there. I always see Data and Spock as essentially the same character, but I think that there's some nuance there that I didn't realize until this episode, that they put a little more depth into Data than they did into Spock, at least in the beginning.
Yeah.
I know Spock gets, especially in the new Abrams movies, Spock gets a lot more depth.
Oh, yeah.
A lot. He becomes a three-dimensional character very easily. So does Kirk, for that matter. I mean, Kirk in this is just kind of smarmy and smarmy. No, he's all about protecting his crew, and he's pretty smarmy, but in the Abrams stuff, he does get more depth, and he becomes more interesting. And part of me kind of wishes they could go back and recreate this series with the same actors, with better scripts. What now?
So careful what you wish for.
Very true.
No, we'll see, because there's a new show coming up.
Yeah. So I have a question for both of you. Reading some of the background of the script, the first person to be cast to pilot and command the shuttlecraft was Kirk. How do you guys think the episode would have changed if Kirk would have been the one on the planet and not Spock?
The story's not there.
Wicked boring.
You don't have... well, I mean,
seriously.
Kirk would have mated with one of the ape people. And it would have been a completely different story. Honestly, I think the entire story is different. I don't think it's as good. I think Tiny's right. It's boring.
It removes the internal.
Go ahead.
It removes the internal conflict that's going on between all of the characters from the Enterprise. There's no sparring between, at least not to the extent that's portrayed with Spock and the rest of them. I think it would just be, you're just removing a whole slice of the conflict by doing that.
Right.
Yeah, and it's a very different episode. I will say that. So,
yeah.
All right. Well, let's slide on over to our notable guest stars, because we have a couple of those. Don Marshall, who played Boma. Boma was a complete jerk in this all the whole time. I mean, just really like. It's like he joined Starfleet not realizing that there was a command structure.
He was like that and the over-emotional part of it. Like, he took everything that Spock was logically and played it emotionally, I feel like.
Yeah, he is best known for Land of the Giants, which was a TV show that he starred in. I'm not sure much about Land of the Giants. Looks like it was about football, maybe? I don't know.
I have no idea.
Honestly, it's from a long time ago in the far, far away. So, but he was in it as Boma. He had quite a bit of screen time, a lot of acting. This is his only appearance on Star Trek as in this one episode, probably because he gets court-martialed and thrown out the airlock shortly after.
Right.
John Crawford, who played Commissioner
Ferris.
Galactic Commissioner Ferris. Galactic. It's very important. He's known for a lot of smaller roles, but he appeared on The Twilight Zone, Gunsmoke, Night Moves, bunch of stuff. He was not bad in this. I think he was overbearing, but I think that was script more than actor. Although I did read a little bit of trivia that he was essentially a giant jerk off screen as well. While he was there. So that was interesting.
He seemed to be like hoity-toity a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. And then the last one that has links in Wikipedia, which to me means that they actually had an acting career and didn't just show up once on Star Trek, was Phyllis Hodge, Boyce. She was Mears, Yeoman Mears, the girl, the token female.
The token female.
The icon.
She actually is. Yeah, she's actually on this episode and The Way to Eden. She's also the only surviving. She was the longest surviving member of the cast of Gone with the Wind when she passed away in 2010.
Oh, wow.
She played 2-year-old Bonnie Blue Butler on Gone with the Wind, which is interesting. But yeah, so she did some other things. She did some stuff for Batman, the TV series.
Was she like Catwoman or something?
No. She was just part of the cast.
Oh, okay.
But those were the three big stars. I think Boma was overly emotional and forceful, but I think it fit well with the opposite of Spock. I always feel like Kirk, Spock, and McCoy have this good trio, and I think they replaced. I think they put Boma in Spock's position, Boma in Kirk's position in that trio, where there are two people completely opposed. And McCoy was still like upset about how Spock was doing it, but he wasn't
overly upset.
A jerk. So, but I think Bowman did fine. I think Ferris was fine. The yeoman didn't have but like 3 lines, so that was unfortunate. But whatever.
But
we keep getting like throwaway yeoman. I think they got burned on Rand.
Right.
So, anyway, let's talk about those ape creatures, the giant ape creatures. What'd you think, Tiny?
Again, I don't have a lot to compare it to as far as otherworldly adversaries in the Star Trek universe. But I mean, you just have to go in with the right attitude and realize it's 1960, whatever, 65, 66. They don't have the technology and the effects that we do now. It was pretty bad, really. I mean, I like that you referred to the death hug that it gave to the guy. Basically, it was like he was trying to comfort him to death.
Yeah,
right.
It's really funny. It was funny, but I'm glad that these things don't just completely take me out of the episodes. Like it's funny and I laugh at it and stuff, but then you kind of get brought back down to what's going on, and it always finds a way to refocus from the campiness. It was funny, and I really didn't mind.
Okay. I felt like when they were in the mists, they were a little more imposing. They tried really hard to make an intensity about them, like they're out there. But I kind of lost it for me when they were just banging on the side of the shuttle with a rock.
Yeah, they were scarier when you couldn't see them.
Yeah, and that death hug, I mean, the thing comes into the screen lumbering and slow.
Yeah.
He could have just outrun him. I mean, really.
Yeah.
I don't know. It wasn't my favorite alien monster thing. That still goes to the weird bird person from The Cage.
Mm-hmm.
Because that was weird. Not The Cage. The Cage?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, The Cage.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, the first episode. The first pilot.
Yeah.
All right, Shirley, did you like the ape creatures? And their giant spears?
For what it
huge.
was. It was kind of scary from the back. I thought they were more caveman-like than ape-like.
Yeah.
That's what I felt.
I want to know what Hannon's planet is like. Because they can when one of the away teams came back, he was like, "Yeah, they're ape creatures like the ones from Hannon's planet, but bigger." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I like that they kind of built something in there that tells us about a world, but we're never going to find anything else." Although I bet there's a memory alpha log entry for Hannon's planet. So, are you familiar with memory alpha, Tiny?
Not at all.
So it's essentially Wikipedia, but only for Star Trek, and people take everything that has ever been written, shown on TV, or anything, and they put it on there. So it's really.
It's a Star Trek Wikipedia.
But it's like, is it mentioned one time in a TV show? It's got a background now.
Wow.
Like they find out what was intended by the producers, and they write it in. And there you go. So it's really, really in depth, and there are things that I've never picked up on that are there on Memory Alpha.
That's amazing.
So, yeah. Anything else that stuck out for you guys? Anything of note?
Not really. Spock logicked it up. That's kind of his thing.
Spock got mad.
He did.
Yeah.
He did get angry.
When they were hiding behind that tiny rock.
Mm-hmm.
Right next to the shuttle, and people kept questioning his orders, he got kind of pissed. So that was fun. They didn't have a problem with those emotions, but they questioned. I guess emotions won out in the end.
Right.
True.
Even though Spock didn't admit it, which I thought was, a nice character moment between
He's just not
Kirk and Spock.
it.
So, all right. Well, let's touch on our... Shirley, was there anything else in your book before we touch on our recurring items?
Just that... the report for Thursday, January 5th, 1967, Star Trek aired right before the dating game. And that's it.
This is riveting radio, Shirley. So, we don't get anything from Bones, really. I mean, he's just, he might as well just be a medical officer at this point. Because we didn't get it. I'm a doctor, not something else. Or he didn't pronounce anybody dead, Jim. Kirk got no ladies.
Nope, didn't get the ladies.
Spock was logical all over the place, though. I mean, like, if he was any more logical, he'd be a machine. Like, there could not have been more logic here. We had no red shirt deaths, but we had 2 gold shirt deaths, that's important.
Yep.
And then Uhura kind of just sat there and answered the telephone.
Yeah.
She did.
Which is unfortunate.
Bit.
We always look for her to do something more than that, and instead she just kind of sat there and answered the telephone. That's it.
Yep.
So, Tiny, what do you think overall? Out of 5, what would you give this episode?
I'd give it a solid 3, just because they bring it in the writing every time, and like I said, I think it makes up for some of the other shortcomings. But there's other episodes I've watched that are definitely like 5s. So it was kind of a step down, but still serviceable.
Right on, Shirley.
I don't know. Such a critic. I don't know. 2.5.
Okay.
Out of 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5. Half.
Half?
So,
okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I'd say this is until the fluff flew out of the rock, this was a solid 3 for me, but that did drop it down to like a 2. This is not the worst thing I've ever seen from Star Trek. Actually, I take that back. This might be the worst thing I've ever seen from Star Trek.
Up to this point.
But I also know that there are other things that are coming that are even worse, like Spock's brain. So, yeah, I hear it's just horrendous.
Spock's brain?
Yeah, Spock's brain.
Okay.
There's an episode called Spock's Brain. So, it's not bad. It's something, you should definitely watch if you're going to watch all of Star Trek. You don't want to miss out on this. But if you're just picking out some good episodes, this is not one I would point you towards. So, Tiny, why don't you tell us a little about where we can find you on the internet and social media sites and the such?
Absolutely. You can just go to obsessiveviewer.com. There's a blog there where my co-host Matt posts a lot of reviews and everything. I'm not a good writer, so I don't really write that much stuff. And then you can also find the podcast there. You can go to reddit.com/r/obsessiveviewer. That's the Obsessive Viewer subreddit. There's almost nothing there. And then you can go to thesecularperspective.com for my other podcast. You can find both podcasts anywhere podcasts are available, iTunes, Stitcher, stuff like that. And
are you on the Google Play?
That's a good question. I don't know. Secular Perspective, definitely not. I don't know. I'm not sure. Matt kind of he rules Obsessive Viewer with an iron fist, as I like to say. So he runs all that stuff. It might be on there. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, excellent. Well, thank you for coming out. I highly recommend Obsessive Viewer. I am a fan. I'd say a big fan, but I obviously am not caught up because I thought Mike was still on hiatus, and maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. But I enjoy Obsessive Viewer. I've listened to quite a few. I've been on a couple episodes. Shirley, you've been on an episode.
Yes, I have.
Yes, you have.
We talked about the Oscars.
The what?
The Oscars.
Yes, I remember.
So we talked about, I want to say, like costuming.
Yes, I talked about the costume.
For movies that we hadn't seen.
But I did my research.
This is true. We did do our research. Yeah, Obsessive Viewer is a great movie podcast about movies and stuff, and one day we'll make them watch something terrible just because we can.
Well, thank you for the kind words.
Yeah. All right. Well, otherwise, everybody else, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you guys next time.
And that'll do us tonight for
There Are Four Lights.
Remember, you can email us at therearefourlightspodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/nerdsdomain, on Twitter at nerdsdomain, or over at our site, nerdsdom.com. Be sure to sign up for the newsletter while you're there. You can head over to iTunes and give us a 5-star rating. A big thanks to 5 Year Mission for their music. You can find them at 5yearmission.net. Don't forget you can support us at patreon.com/nerdsdomain. And check out our shirts at /loot.